Welcome back to my YouTube channel, dedicated to uncovering the hidden value and fascinating history behind old coins. Today we dive deep into the incredible story of the Washington Quarter, and how three specific years, 1967, 1972, and 1974, contain some of the rarest and most sought-after examples among collectors and enthusiasts around the world. The Washington Quarter was first introduced in 1932 as part of the bicentennial celebration of George Washington's birth, and it quickly became one of the most recognized coins in American currency, replacing the standing Liberty Quarter. The original design by John Flanagan featured a profile portrait of George Washington, where we dive deep into the fascinating world of old coin values. Today, we are going to explore in great detail the rare and intriguing 1972 Washington Quarter and three of its most valuable variants. This video is designed to guide both new collectors and seasoned numismatists through the full historical journey of this coin, its production background, the mintage details, the rare errors and varieties that have made it famous among collectors, and how it fits into the larger story of American coinage history. The story of the 1972 Washington Quarter begins with the man himself, George Washington, the first president of the United States, whose face would eventually become a defining symbol of American coinage. The Washington Quarter was first introduced in 1932 as part of the bicentennial celebration of Washington's birth, and it replaced the standing Liberty Quarter, which had been in circulation since 1916. The choice to put Washington on the quarter was both a tribute and a practical design change initiated by the Treasury Department and supported by the American public. The original design was created by sculptor John Flanagan, and over time, it became one of the most recognized coins in the United States. By the time we reached the year 1972, the Washington Quarter had been in production for exactly 4 decades. The coin retained its original obverse portrait of Washington, while the reverse still featured the heraldic eagle design that had become familiar to generations of Americans. However, what makes the 1972 Washington Quarter especially fascinating to collectors today are 3 very specific varieties that emerged due to minting errors and unusual production conditions which occurred that year at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, and it is these varieties that we will explore in detail today. Let us first understand the standard mintage for the 1972 quarter. The Philadelphia Mint, which at the time did not use a mint mark, struck over 215 million quarters. The Denver Mint, identified by the small d mint mark, produced over 311 million quarters, while the San Francisco Mint focused primarily on proof coins, struck just over 3 million of those. These proof coins were struck multiple times to ensure clarity and sharpness and were never intended for general circulation. Now, among these millions of coins, there exist a few that, due to mechanical mishaps, design imperfections, or hub misalignments, ended up being drastically different and therefore highly collectible today. The first rare variety we must discuss is the 1972 double die obverse. This error was created during the die-making process when the hub that impresses the coin's image onto the die made a slight shift or doubled impression. This caused certain areas of the coin, especially the date, the word Liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust," to appear doubled under magnification or even to the naked eye. This doubling can be dramatic or slight, and the more dramatic examples command higher values in the collector market. This type of error is one of the most sought after in all of American numismatics, and its presence in the 1972 quarter series makes this coin exceptionally special. The second variety of the 1972 quarter that draws significant attention is the San Francisco proof quarter with a rare S/D mint mark. This is known as an over-mint mark error and occurs when a die that was originally intended for one mint is repurposed for use in another, and the original mint mark is not completely removed. In the 1972 case, a die with a D mark for Denver was modified for the San Francisco Mint, but the D was not fully erased and the S was stamped over it under magnification. Both mint marks can be seen. This error is extremely rare and adds tremendous value to the coin, especially if the strike is well preserved in its proof condition. Collectors prize this error not just for its rarity, but for what it reveals about the minting practices and challenges of the U.S. Mint in the early 1970s. The third rare and valuable variety is the 1972 quarter struck on a wrong planchet. A planchet is the blank piece of metal that is struck into a coin during minting in some cases due to oversight. A planchet meant for another denomination, or even a foreign coin, finds its way into the quarter press. In 1972, there are known examples of Washington quarters struck on nickel 5-cent planchets, copper penny planchets, and even some that weigh significantly less or more than a standard quarter. This happens due to planchet mix-ups and is an extremely rare phenomenon because each coin must pass through automated weight checks at the mint. If a wrong planchet quarter escapes those systems and enters circulation or is preserved in uncirculated condition, it becomes a prized anomaly in the world of error coin collecting. To understand the full historical impact of the 1972 Washington quarter, we also need to understand what was happening economically and politically in the United States. During this time, the early 1970s were marked by major shifts in both the American economy and the role of physical currency in daily life in 1965. The Coinage Act had eliminated silver from circulating quarters, replacing it with a copper nickel-clad composition. This change altered both the look and feel of American coinage, and by 1972, this clad coinage had become fully normalized. However, collectors were still adjusting, and many continued to hoard older silver quarters from pre-1965 due to their melt value and perceived scarcity. This environment meant that any unusual or standout quarter from the clad era would be noticed and appreciated by sharp-eyed collectors. At the same time, the U.S. Mint was dealing with increasing pressure to meet high demand for coinage. As the economy expanded, the Philadelphia and Denver mints were operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of coins annually. Under such heavy production conditions, errors became more common and quality control more challenging. This helps explain why the 1972 year in particular has yielded so many interesting errors and varieties. It was a year of high production, low silver content, and transitional adjustments across the minting infrastructure. Now let us go deeper into the diagnostics of each of these rare varieties, for the double die-obverse collectors should look closely at the date, especially the number 2 in 1972, which often shows the clearest signs of doubling the letters in Liberty, also shows separation lines, and the motto, "In God We Trust," often exhibits shadowing effects. This variety is typically found in circulated condition, but even low-grade examples can fetch significant premiums, especially if the doubling is strong and well-centered coins that are graded by third-party services such as PCGS or NGC, and verified as true doubled die examples will often be listed at auction for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. For the S/D mint mark proof, quarter collectors will need to use magnification and pay close attention to the shape and placement of the mint mark. Look for the curve of the D beneath the upper serif of the S. This is a subtle and rare feature, and it often requires expert attribution services to verify. However, once verified, the coin becomes a showpiece for any collection and a prime example of minting history. This type of error also offers insights into how dies were shared, repurposed, or mistakenly prepared at the U.S. mints. A reminder that even the most precise government operations can produce surprises. As for wrong planchet strikes, collectors will need to be aware of a coin's weight, diameter, and edge structure. A normal 1972 quarter should weigh around 5.67 grams and have a reeded edge. If a coin weighs less or more than expected or lacks a reeded edge, it may have been struck on a different planchet. The unintentional artistry of minting errors that give rise to entire categories of collecting passion. Whether you are just beginning to explore coin collecting or have been in the hobby for decades, the 1972 quarter offers something valuable to everyone. It is a coin with a story, a mystery, and a legacy. As we continue this video, we will show side-by-side examples of standard versus error. Coins demonstrate how to examine mint marks under a loupe, show how grading affects the value of these coins, and walk through recent auction results to give you a full picture of how much these coins are really worth in today's market. We will also explore how to store, preserve, and potentially sell your rare coins, whether online through auctions or to private collectors. So stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into this historical treasure, the 1972 Washington Quarter, and the rare variants that make it one of the most intriguing coins in modern numismatics, where we dive deep into the fascinating world of old coins and their hidden value. Today we take a comprehensive journey through the life and legacy of the Washington Quarter from the year 1967, one of the most talked about coins in American numismatic history. While it may not be made of silver like its predecessors, the 1967 Washington Quarter holds a significant place in American coinage and monetary history. And today we're going to explore every detail, from its creation, the historical context, its design, the economic backdrop of the time, the mintage figures, varieties, errors, collector interest, market trends, and everything in between. This is the kind of history that deserves more than a glance, and we're going to give it the attention it truly deserves. To understand the 1967 Washington Quarter, we have to travel back in time to the early 20th century, specifically to 1932, the year the Washington Quarter series was first introduced. This coin was initially created to commemorate the 200th birthday of George Washington, the first president of the United States. It replaced the standing Liberty Quarter, which had been in circulation since 1916. The artist behind the design was John Flanagan, who submitted the winning entry for the new quarter. His design featured a left-facing portrait of George Washington on the obverse and an eagle with outspread wings perched on a bundle of arrows on the reverse, surrounded by olive branches symbolizing both strength and peace. The Washington Quarter was intended to be a one-year commemorative coin, but due to its popularity and aesthetic, it became the standard design moving forward. For the first 3 decades, the Washington Quarter was struck in 90% silver and 10% copper, but by the early 1960s, the rising cost of silver had caused significant strain on the U.S. Mint and led to a nationwide coin shortage. This was a time of economic pressure, inflation, and concerns over the intrinsic value of coins exceeding their face value. People began hoarding silver coins, causing them to disappear from circulation. The U.S. Treasury responded by removing silver from circulating dimes and quarters and introducing new clad compositions that would serve as more economical alternatives to traditional coinage materials. This brings us to the year 1965, when the Coinage Act was passed, eliminating silver from quarters entirely and replacing the composition with a clad structure consisting of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded to a core of pure copper. This marked the beginning of the modern era of clad coinage, and 1967 was just the 3rd year of this new system. But it wasn't just the composition that made 1967 quarters unique. The coinage policies of the time led to some unusual decisions by the U.S. Mint, including the temporary suspension of mint marks to discourage hoarding and speculation. This meant that all 1967 quarters were struck without any mint mark making it impossible to tell whether a coin was minted in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. The 1967 Washington Quarter saw a massive mintage due to ongoing concerns about coin shortages. More than 1.5 billion quarters were produced that year, making it one of the highest mintage years in the series despite the enormous quantity the year still offers. Several notable varieties and errors that collectors seek out today. These include double die obverses, misaligned dies, clipped planchets, and struck-through errors. Due to the sheer volume of coins being produced, quality control was not as stringent. And so error coins from 1967 are relatively more common than other years, though high-grade specimens still command premiums in the collector market. But why is the 1967 quarter still so widely discussed among collectors today? Part of the reason lies in its position as a transitional coin, not only in terms of composition, but also in terms of how the U.S. Mint handled production and distribution. It was struck during a time of massive changes and experimentation. The Mint issued special mint sets known as Special Mint Sets, or SMS, instead of traditional proof sets from 1965 to 1967. These SMS coins are characterized by a higher quality finish, but they do not exhibit the same mirror-like surfaces as traditional proofs. They are semi-proof-like with a distinctive satiny texture and often sharper strikes compared to regular circulation strikes. The SMS 1967 Washington quarter is especially desirable when found in high grades with cameo or deep cameo contrast between the frosted devices and mirrored fields. Grading plays a crucial role in the value of a 1967 Washington quarter, while the average circulated coin may only be worth face value. High-grade mint state examples can be significantly more valuable. Coins graded MS66, MS67, or better by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, are quite rare and can fetch prices ranging from a few dollars to several $100s depending on quality and eye appeal. An SMS quarter in SP67 with deep cameo contrast is even more desirable due to its scarcity and visual appeal. The economic backdrop of the late 1960s also provides a rich historical context for understanding the 1967 quarter. This was a time of social change, political unrest, and financial reform in the United States. The Vietnam War was ongoing. Civil rights movements were gaining momentum, and the government was dealing with inflation and monetary concerns. The removal of silver from coins was part of a broader shift in fiscal policy, and the 1967 quarter became a symbol of the new era of American coinage. It's also worth noting that the Washington quarter has had a remarkable run in American history. It remained largely unchanged until the late 1990s, when the U.S. Mint introduced the 50-state quarters program, which brought new designs to the reverse of the coin starting in 1999, but throughout those decades, the 1967 coin retained its status as a transitionary piece, linking the silver coinage of the past to the clad coins of the future. It is one of the last quarters to feature the original eagle reverse before significant design changes began to take place. In terms of modern collecting, the 1967 Washington quarter remains a staple in many collections due to its historical importance, availability, and the potential for rare high-grade examples. Collectors often look for SMS coins with deep cameo contrast error coins and unusually well-struck examples. It also serves as a great educational piece for those interested in the evolution of U.S. coinage and the political and economic factors that influence how money is made, so whether you're a beginner just getting started in the hobby or a seasoned numismatist, the 1967 Washington quarter is a coin worth knowing. Its story tells us about more than just metal. It tells us about America itself, its economy, its leadership, its people, and its perseverance through changing times and changing values. Stay with us as we explore the designs, the engravers, the minting process, the collector market, the auction records, and the future of this iconic coin, as we continue this 2-hour deep dive into one of the most talked-about clad coins in American history, where we explore the fascinating and rich world of old coins and numismatic treasures. And today, we are going deep into the long and intricate history of the 1974 Washington quarter, a coin that many of us have seen countless times but few truly understand in terms of its historical context, metal content, minting variations, collector demand, and potential value in the coin market. The story of the Washington quarter begins far before 1974, with the origin of the Story of the Washington Quarter begins far before 1974, with the origin of the design itself tracing back to 1932, when the United States was looking to honor the 200th anniversary of the birth of George Washington, the first president of the United States, and a figure deeply revered across generations of Americans. The original design was submitted as part of a competition where several renowned artists competed. But in the end, the chosen design came from John Flanagan, a sculptor whose interpretation of Washington's likeness was inspired by the bust created by Jean-Antoine Houdon. The reverse of the coin featured a heraldic eagle with outstretched wings, perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches beneath, symbolizing both readiness for war and hope for peace. This design became an iconic representation of American strength and values, and it remained largely unchanged for decades, including the year 1974, which is our focus today. The 1974 Washington Quarter was minted at a time of economic change and cultural transition in the United States. The early 1970s were marked by inflation, a shift away from silver coinage, and changes in how coins were produced, handled, and collected, since the Coinage Act of 1965 quarters had been made of a copper-nickel-clad composition rather than the 90% silver used in earlier decades. This means that the 1974 quarter has a core of pure copper and an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it a total weight of 5.67 grams with a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. The coin bears the obverse of George Washington facing left with the inscriptions "Liberty," the motto "In God We Trust," and the year 1974 below his profile. Now let's talk about the mint locations and how that affects the value of the 1974 Washington Quarter. These coins were struck at 3 different mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The ones struck in Philadelphia carry no mint mark, while the Denver coins show a small D on the obverse to the right of Washington's ponytail, and the San Francisco coins have an S mint mark. The Philadelphia and Denver coins were released for general circulation, while the San Francisco coins were generally minted as proofs and targeted toward collectors. The total mintage of the 1974 quarter was immense, making it a common date among Washington quarters, but there are subtle differences that can make certain examples far more valuable than face value. The Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 801 million quarters in 1974, while the Denver Mint produced about 353 million, and the San Francisco Mint struck around 2.6 million proof coins. What makes the 1974 quarter interesting from a collector's standpoint is not just the sheer numbers, but the condition variations, die varieties, and minting anomalies that occasionally occurred during production over such large quantities. Condition is everything in coin collecting, and that brings us to the concept of coin grading. Professional graders use a scale from 1 to 70 called the Sheldon scale, with higher numbers indicating better preservation, a 1974 Washington Quarter. In heavily circulated condition may not be worth much above face value, but in mint state or uncirculated grades, especially MS65 or higher, the value can begin to climb dramatically. Collectors also prize full strike coins, especially those with full details on Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers on the reverse. Another factor to consider is luster, or the brilliance of the coin's surface, which can be lost over time due to handling exposure and improper storage. Let's now take a closer look at the proof coins from San Francisco, which were struck with special dies, polished blanks, and multiple strikes to bring out mirror-like fields and frosted details. These coins were not intended for circulation and usually came in sealed sets, purchased directly from the mint. Although common in terms of overall quantity, these proof coins are sought after in high grades, especially when they are free of haze or spotting and maintain. Strong contrast between the frosted devices and the mirror backgrounds, known as cameo or deep cameo, finishes the presence of these visual characteristics can significantly increase the market value. There are also error coins from 1974 that can be worth much more than typical examples. Errors, such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets, double dies, and struck-through errors where foreign material interfered with the strike, can all be quite valuable to collectors. One of the most sought-after errors in the Washington Quarter series is the double die, especially if visible on the date or lettering while not officially confirmed, as existing for the 1974 issue. Collectors remain on the lookout for any die varieties or anomalies that could drive interest and demand. Beyond physical aspects, the 1974 quarter reflects a moment in American monetary and cultural history. It was minted just after the U.S. officially ended the Bretton Woods Agreement, which had tied the dollar to gold, and at a time when inflation was beginning to impact the economy, the cost of metal production was rising, which explains why the U.S. had already moved away from silver content in its circulating coinage nearly a decade prior. The copper-nickel composition of the 1974 quarter ensured durability and cost-effectiveness, but also marked the end of an era when coins had intrinsic metal value. The coin is both a monetary instrument and a historical artifact, capturing the design ethos and economic strategy of the mid-20th century. Collectors who focus on Washington quarters often assemble full-date and mint-mark sets, and the 1974 coin plays a central role in any complete collection of clad quarters from 1965 to 1998. This period is sometimes overlooked compared to the earlier silver issues, but it is gaining respect, especially as high-grade examples become harder to find due to natural attrition from circulation and wear. Finding a 1974 Washington quarter in pristine condition can be a challenge, and prices at auction reflect the scarcity of such coins, with examples in MS-67 and above fetching significant sums due to their rarity and demand from registry set collectors. Registry sets are competitive collections registered with grading services like PCGS and NGC, where collectors aim to assemble the finest possible set of a given coin series. The 1974 quarter plays a pivotal role in such sets, and that contributes to the rising prices seen at auction for top-grade coins over the past decade. Prices for high-grade Washington quarters have increased steadily as demand grows, and the supply of well-preserved examples remains limited. Coins with strong eye appeal, sharp strikes, and original luster are especially prized and can command premiums, many times face value. In conclusion, the 1974 Washington quarter is more than just pocket change. It is a product of historical forces, artistic legacy, minting technology, economic change, and collector passion. Whether you are searching through your change,